Women who slept with their bosses, how did it end? Seems to be more common than I thought. What's your take? Just had our 5-year wedding anniversary. We're 2 years into a nasty divorce and he's being an unreasonable ass. I was 19 to 20, he was 33 and a newly divorced single dad. On a whim, I moved to Oregon with him and we helped operate a large-scale weed-growing, distribution business, before it was legal. All I can say is, I'm grateful I've learned from my mistakes. He fell in love with me and could no longer separate work-personal affairs. He was able to before then, his decisions became increasingly emotionally driven. It was horrible. Never again. Do not do this. Please. I'm begging you. This will not end up going well for you. It never does. There is a reason they say not to do this. Just listen to them. Best sex I ever had, through. For real, like, by a lot. Babes, you're not helping with that last part. 2 kids now 17 years 14 years. Split up when youngest was 6 mths after being together 7 years. We fell out of love not friendship, couldn't have wished for a better father to my children. A decade ago we had a hot 10-month fling before he switched accounts and we kind of drifted apart. We still get on well enough and sometime he asks me to do jobs for him if I'm available. He's pretty awesome to chill with, but we have different lifestyles. It made for some real amazing memories, and I regret nothing. Both times, I know, I was left with no job. I have now learnt from my mistakes. It was rocky at first because it was sometimes hard to separate work stress from our relationship, but after we quit our job for better opportunities, things got a lot better for us. 6 years later, and we're still together, so you could say it hasn't ended. He threatened to bury me in the desert for talking to a coworker, another woman. And then I was not allowed to work at that store. I transferred and on my first day my new manager assumed I would also be with him. I hate when my mother is right. Everyone at work found out. Still not sure how to this day. I was called a whore behind my back and I found out everyone had been talking about the situation and about me. My boss had to transfer locations. It was really embarrassing. I no longer work there for unrelated reason. It never works out well for the woman. He was married. Sorry. I was young and impulsive. I was 21, he was in his 30s. He was ready to go for it with me and end his marriage, but I was 21 and not there for that. His marriage ended soon after that. We're still friends, but he sometimes would bitterly reminisce about how I didn't choose him. But that stopped when he got married again and now they have an adorable kid. I'm happy for him. Guess it didn't occur to him that he's a dirtbag cheater. We both lost our jobs but stayed together for 6 years after. Wasn't my direct boss but a senior supervisor at work. It was pretty hot and amazing at first. Then a new girl joined and he started acting like we were strangers at work. A few weeks later we were at his house and he told me not to take things seriously, then left as I was crying my eyes out in his room. I was devastated and really depressed for the next few months. Work sucked because I had to see him every day. I still acted civil and friendly with him at work because I didn't want to ruin the atmosphere at work. The worst thing was I could him falling for the new girl. Just the way he behaved and the things he did for her, he never treated me like that. I did tell the new girl about us because we had become good friends by then and I didn't want any misunderstanding between us. But she still got close to him and would come to my house and tell me all the shit they did together and how he messaged, called her, etc. Even though she knew I wasn't over him and even after I told her countless times not to tell me about him. It was really bad for my mental health. It's been more than a year now and I am over him. I don't talk to them both unless it's work-related. Never ever date someone from work. It's a recipe for disaster. At least this shitty experience taught me a valuable lesson. It was hot AF. He was taking over as GM of a different store when we finally slept together, so really it wasn't a huge overlap. But we slept together the first night he found out he was being promoted and leaving, and the secrecy for a month was fire didn't work out in the end. But honestly we are on good terms and he's married and I'm engaged now years later. I dated my team leader. I shifted teams when we got more serious as I couldn't be a direct report anymore. I changed jobs when we got a house together. I am now a SAHP to our daughter Grin, 6 years together and 1.5 married. Did it twice. Both I was between 18 to 22, they were both in their 30s. First one, I ended up transferring departments and moving in with. He became less attractive, and I realized he was old and we were in completely different points in our lives. Second one, I was an idiot and it was stupid and I ended up leaving the job because he became quite obsessive. Long story short, it's always a bad idea. Seems thrilling but not worth it. Super great. I'm a 27F and he's a 37 meters. He is the owner of the company and I have an open relationship with my boyfriend. We set super clear boundaries and he is one of my closest work friends now, and when I ended it he stayed respectful, and it was honestly the only super positive long-term hookup I've ever had in my open relationship. He was not married and I don't think this could have worked without the both of us discussing it at length first and both of us having high emotional intelligence and actually sticking to our boundaries. He was 32, I was 22. He cheated on me with another coworker who was 19. I was heartbroken at the time. The first time it didn't end well. Both got fired. Second time I dated my boss for 3 months. People at work didn't know. I'm currently in a 6-year relationship with my boss from 6 years ago. People started to notice we were together, so I quit my job so neither of us would randomly get fired. We're currently remodeling our kitchen to look like the restaurant we met each other at. Even bought the same blue tin ceiling tiles and orange paint. To me it's a different story that I was 20, he was 30, married. I just came to Canada and felt depressed and isolated as I didn't really have friends or family to support me. He seized the chance to stalk me and show up at my door and my classroom uninvited. He tried to control who I talked to and chased away everyone who tried to date me. He took my virginity and poured hot tea on me or threatened me in different ways, physically, mentally. PPL didn't know what really happened, so all humiliated me and called me a whore and home wrecker. All I can say is it's still haunted by the experience happened over a decade ago and having nightmares about it. He is ugly, gross man that I would never fall for if he didn't hunted me as if he was a predator and I was the prey, and TBH I never fell for him. I just forced myself to think in a way, so I feel a bit better for what happened. Got married 5 years later, separated 8 years after marrying, divorced 5 years after separating, still best friends. I was the one who convinced him to start a relationship with his now fiancée. I married him. We were married for 31 years, had 2 kids together and lived happily until his death 2 years ago. P.S. We were both going through a separation from our current spouses at the time, so neither one of us was a homewrecker. He fell in love with me. We 1,000,000% were so stupid to get involved. We both were separated from our spouses, in the middle of divorces. Once I told him there was no chance of us being together, I just wanted to get laid. He stopped his divorce and lives in a dead bedroom. That's why he was divorcing to begin with. We're still together. He was my boss for about a year at my previous company. It was incredibly hot sneaking around. I ended up leaving the company once it got more serious and he did also. It's been several years since.